Southern California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Today we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get to in the world of Southern California sports, such as the San Diego Padres. They did the unthinkable. Those madmen upset the Dodgers in the NLDS. They have an encore performance in the NLCS against the Philadelphia Phillies as it's Team of Destiny versus Team of Destiny. And the Chargers and Rams won in ugly fashion, with the Chargers being in the ugliest. But a win's a win as the Rams enter the bye while the Chargers have a short week as they play the Seattle Seahawks. Also, LA Galaxy registers a playoff win over Nashville. Now they have to face LAFC in El Tráfico, the rubber match. And Wave FC pulls off their first playoff win of its history as they take down Chicago in overtime. Can they take down Portland? Also, the Lakers and Clippers kick off their season this week. We have a lot to get into in terms of college football. All that and more here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio. Your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, Thursday morning, wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made it to episode 109 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. So unfortunately, I did have to move around SoCal from Friday to Thursday just because Friday I've got some Southern California things to attend to. It's going to be a busy day for me tomorrow, but without any further delay of today, let's get on into that SoCal sports action. But first and foremost, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio. You can follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok with the handle at IE Sports Radio, and on Facebook by typing in the word IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar. Also, iSports Radio has a website, www.isportsradio.com, and when you go to the website, you'll see a Patreon link at the top, which starts at $5 a month. This will get you a shout-out from all of our shows, including this one, and higher tiers include iSports Radio merchandise, access to ISRU, our podcasting university, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 8 years and counting, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities across the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. With your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all the sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Key to the Gate, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. Alright, now let's get on into that Southern California sports action. So we have a lot to get into. I mean, obviously San Diego has had himself a big weekend, but we obviously have to start with the big thing, which is football, because football is king. So we'll start off with the Rams, just so we're going in chronological order. So the Rams played the Carolina Panthers in what was probably the most ugliest, I wouldn't say ugliest game, but it was an ugly game for the most part for the Rams. I mean, Matt Stafford threw a pick six in the first half, and I was extremely concerned. It's like, okay, now I'm concerned, and honestly, I didn't really see a whole lot of this game, but I saw enough. Truthfully, I was watching the Bills and Chiefs, but I knew in my mind the Rams would get the win, but I just didn't think it would. I thought they would at least kind of blow them out. Granted, it was better than the previous meeting where the Rams won 30-27, but that was when the Panthers had a competent team. The Panthers did not have a competent team, and the Rams only won by 14, which I guess is not bad. The negative thing about the Rams losing is that they lost Joseph Notaboom in this game, as he's now out for the season. I think he's the left tackle. He's the left tackle. So the Rams are without Joseph Notaboom for the rest of the year, and it seems like the Rams' offensive line continues to suffer some slings and arrows. At this point, the Rams may actually have to go out and make more key trades and maybe trade more picks. So the Rams were down 10-7 at halftime after the pick six with like 2 minutes to go in the second quarter. But then the Rams shut them out the rest of the way. I made a joke on Twitter saying that the Rams were basically the Rams stopped playing Make-A-Wish and they started playing football, as starting at quarterback for Carolina was P.J. Walker, who was only 10 for 16, and he had 60 passing yards. Like it got to the point where Christian McCaffrey was practically the entire offense, as also Carolina had to bring in Jacob Eason as well, and he didn't really fare much better than the former. So as for Matt Stafford, despite that interception, he had 253 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and he was 26 for 33, which wasn't bad. This also saw another week where we didn't get to see Cooper Kupp score a touchdown, which it's all good as long as the Rams get the win. But this really has me concerned. It's like, how much more offensive line injuries do the Rams have to suffer? Fortunately, they have their bye week, but most of their injured players are based on the offensive line are basically out for the season. The next 2 games for the Rams following their bye are going to be brutal, as the Rams play the 49ers, which that's obviously going to be tough considering Jimmy G has owned the Rams in the regular season, but not the postseason. And then the Rams, following that, they have to hit the road to Tampa Bay to take on Tom Brady and the Bucs. And it could also get even more tougher because the Cardinals aren't necessarily bad, but I mean, they're not great, but they could be 500 by the time they face the Rams. Same can be said for the Saints, though I don't really like their chances of getting to 500 before they face the Rams. Then they have the Chiefs, then they have the Seahawks. The Raiders could be a little bit of a trap game. The Packers are going to be a tough little matchup considering they struggle at Green Bay. Then the Broncos are a little underrated. I mean, they're under offensive, which for the Rams, that could be a problem. I mean, look at what happened with the Chargers, but more on that later. And then after the Broncos on Christmas Day, the Rams play the Chargers, and then they close out the season against Seattle. So there's not too many breaks in between. There's not going to be any gimme matches. Like, the Rams have really got to earn it. And this offensive line is getting thinner and thinner by the day. So I'm hoping the Rams could find some way to, like, pull off an upset or two against some of these teams. Like, looking at their schedule, I think the teams that I think they could beat are the Cardinals, the Panthers, or not the Cardinals, the Cardinals, the Saints, the Seahawks twice, and then the Broncos and the Raiders. Other than that, I don't know. I'm not concerned about I'm a little concerned about the others, but overall, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Right now, the Rams need to enjoy their bye, rest up, get healthy, and hope they can make a big second half surge, because it is going to be really tough for them. I mean, I thought the Seahawks games were going to be gimmies, but now Geno Smith has been balling out, and then Kenneth Walker has also done wonders for the running back position. So that is that for the Rams. I mean, there's not much else to talk about except they have their bye, so they don't have a game this week. So we shall see you in one more week, Rams. So as for the Chargers, so if you all know, I had to switch my podcast set point from 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern, to 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern, to watch the Chargers-Broncos game. And I was wise to do so, except maybe kind of not so much. Just because the Chargers had to play their most ugliest game of the season. They had to grind this one out against the Broncos. So we all thought the Broncos game on Thursday Night Football against the Colts was hideous. Well, the Chargers decided to up the ante as they basically went overtime. But before we get on into overtime, we got to take it from the first quarter. So first quarter, Broncos kick a field goal. The Rams' offense is stuck in mud, or the Chargers' offense is stuck in mud. They can't get that first down when it truly matters, and then they give the ball back to the Broncos. The Broncos, it looks like Russell Wilson's about to get sacked on 3rd and 13, but then he escapes. He finds a wide open Jerry Jeudy. He gets the first down and a little bit more. Then I think on the next play, there was some blown coverage as Russell Wilson hits Greg Dulcich, of all players, the former UCLA tight end, as he just waltzes into the end zone unscathed for the touchdown. And this was actually Dulcich's first game for the Broncos, as this was his first game back, as he was on, he was on the PUP list to start out the season, but now he was able to get some time. He actually ate into Albert O. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but I'll say Albert O's time, because Albert O was atop the depth chart in terms of tight ends, and then his snap count got diminished to the point where Dulcich took over and he scored his first ever touchdown as a Bronco. So good job to the former tight end Greg Dulcich. So at that point it was 10-0, and I'm like, okay, the Chargers defense is completely bad. But the offense starts to get it going. Justin Herbert found Donald Parham for probably the biggest gain of the night. And then eventually the Chargers got down to I think it was the 11 or the 10-yard line. And then Austin Eckler rumbles his way through. He actually got help from his offensive line as basically they pushed the pile into the end zone. And that was one of the highlights of the offense from the Chargers, as there wasn't too much offensive highlight from the Bolts, as on their next scoring drive, they actually had to walk away with a field goal. And then before the half ended, obviously it didn't look like that Russell Wilson and the Broncos were going to get another score. But then we realized the Chargers defense is practically porous. I think it was 3rd and 9, and then Wilson escaped the pocket and he chucked one downfield for, I think it was KJ Hamler. KJ Hamler, who was wide open, and basically he got tackled, but eventually the Broncos got down to the point where they were in field goal range, and Brandon McManus hit the field goal. So it was 13-10 in favor of the Broncos, as the Broncos also got the ball to start the first half. And the Chargers were really making Russell Wilson look elite, like he was back in his youth days. But then the second half came. Ugly third quarter, as there was no scoring, but then as the quarter ended, the Chargers were driving, and eventually, I think they got their game-tying field goal sometime. I think it was sometime in the third quarter. Either way, the Chargers finally got some points, and they finally tied the game up at 13-13. And then they were driving. Now I remember. They were driving in that late in the third quarter. Then in the fourth quarter, they went for it on 4th and 2, which everyone thought it was going to be 4th and 1. And then, unfortunately, to the dismay of Chargers fans, it was incomplete, as Herbert tried to find, DeAndre Carter, but then the pass was broken up by Mathis. Either way, it was Denver ball. And the Broncos, I want to say, the Broncos eventually got their go-ahead field goal in that quarter, as it was at the 8:21 mark, as the Broncos led 16-13. It was just an ugly offensive performance by both teams, as both teams were just getting in their own way. Eventually, the Chargers did march down the field. They did get a lot of help from some pass interference calls, which that was kind of the highlight for Justin Herbert, because he also threw an interception in that fourth quarter, and that was just frustrating. Now I remember, it was when Justin Herbert threw an interception in the fourth quarter. I think it was like the second drive for the Chargers in the fourth quarter, which didn't carry over from the third quarter, as Herbert threw the interception, which set up the field goal for Brandon McManus. Then Dustin Hopkins was able to kick the game tying field goal with 3:58. The Chargers eventually got their offense together, but again, it was mainly aided by pass interference. Like, the Broncos had so many pass interference calls. I mean, some of them were ticky-tack, but it still is callable. And then eventually the Chargers got the ball, and they unfortunately they had to go Hail Mary mode. They got the ball last in regulation, but the Hail Mary didn't even fall into the end zone, as it was basically incomplete. So then we got overtime. So then the first 6 possessions, there was no first downs. Both teams were going 3 and out. And I'm like, do either of these teams want to win? It was just ugly. That's how ugly this game was. And I'm pretty sure both defenses were gassed. But it was the case of who wants it more or who doesn't want it more. So after the Chargers had to punt for the third time in the overtime period, this was kind of an interesting play. This was an interesting sequence on special teams. So the kick returner from the Broncos, he signals for a fair catch, but then the Broncos blocker decides to put a block in front of the kick returner, and then the Chargers defender, I think it was Jasir Taylor, he pushes the blocker right into the kick returner, and then the ball hits the kick returner, and then the ball eventually gets recovered by the Chargers. And from there, they eventually got Dustin Hopkins in a closer field goal range. As I also should mention this, Hopkins did have himself a bad hamstring. Like, he was kicking field goals and that lone extra point with a bad hamstring. Like, if that's not tough right there, then I don't know what is. So the big play on the Chargers' final offensive drive was Justin Herbert finally finding Mike Williams. I think it was like 3rd and 11, and then Herbert found Williams on a gain of 9. And everyone thinks that that's not big, but it was huge just because it gets Dustin Hopkins into closer field goal range, as he eventually had to kick a 39-yard field goal. Like, Hopkins' field goals came from, in this particular order, 37, 31, 35, and then the game-winning field goal came from 39. If Mike Williams does not make that catch, I imagine it is, if I'm doing my math correctly, that's a 48-yard field goal try for Dustin Hopkins. And knowing the Chargers' luck in terms of getting clutch kicks, I don't know if he makes it. But either way, the Chargers nailed the game-winning field goal, and Dustin Hopkins is the hero, as this man with a bad hamstring kicked the game-winning field goal as the Chargers beat the Broncos 19-16. Very ugly game, as Justin Herbert was 37 for 57 for 238 passing yards and 1 interception. He actually became the second quarterback in NFL history to pass for 55-plus passes and not have a touchdown. The other one came from the Houston Oilers' Warren Moon, as Herbert actually became the quarterback with the most passes without a touchdown. And I don't know if that could be classified as a good thing or a bad thing, but either way, it's still a win. Like, it was an ugly game offensively. Like, Joshua Palmer led the team in receiving yards with 57. That's how ugly this one was. And keep in mind that the Chargers did not have Keenan Allen. Like, Keenan Allen unfortunately could not go tonight. And again, Brandon Staley was being cautious because he wanted Allen back at full strength as possible, and it's totally understandable. So the Chargers moved to 5-2, or no, I'm sorry, 4-2. 4-2. My apologies. They have a chance to be 5-2, as this week they still remain at home to take on the Seattle Seahawks. So, looking at this starting out, so the Chargers injury report saw Keenan Allen not participating, and it looks like he won't be playing. As he said that he doesn't want to risk his hamstring getting hurt even more to the point where he's going to be out for longer. And then Donald Parham was in concussion protocol. Joshua Palmer was in concussion protocol. Joshua Kelly tweaked his knee and is out for 2 to 4 weeks. Dustin Hopkins is out for 2 to 4 weeks with a bad hamstring. So basically, Dustin Hopkins was the game kicked 4 field goals, which were basically the majority of the Chargers' points. And he also had the game-winning field goal, but at what cost? He basically is injured, and the poor guy has to miss this week's game, and then who knows what's going to happen with the Falcons and the Niners. But thank you to Dustin Hopkins. You are the real MVP. So, eventually... Oh, I should also mention that the Chargers didn't have Corey Linsley, who was out due to illness, so I really hope he gets back sooner rather than later. The Chargers really need their offensive line to get back sooner. I know that Rashawn Slater is most likely out for the season, but looking at the team stats for the for the Broncos, they had 4 sacks, and the Chargers only had 2 sacks, but they were big sacks. One was by Derwin James, and the other was by Drew Tranquill. That Tranquill sack came on the Broncos' last offensive drive in regulation. But those 4 sacks really hurt Justin Herbert and the offense. The offense really needed them, and I think there was a point where it was the Chargers' final drive, and the Chargers were pinned well deep within their territory, and it looks like Justin Herbert was going to get sacked, but then he just flipped it to Austin Eckler, and Eckler was able to get back to the line of scrimmage, which was kind of huge. But either way, the Chargers still have a lot to work on. I know the Broncos' defense has always been a good one, but it shouldn't have been that ugly, and it literally should not be on the kicker to try to help win them the game. It just means that the Chargers need their offensive line fully healthy, and I hope they can get back Corey Linsley for this week. So looking at the Seahawks, the Seahawks are not as bad as we all thought they were. I thought they were going to be extremely bad, but they have really turned the corner. Geno Smith, of all things, he has turned this team quite around. I am very impressed with how Geno Smith has really turned the ignition on for the Seahawks' offense. And Larry B, thank you for joining me in the chat room. He says there's still his Super Bowl pick for the AFC. I hope so too. I'm crossing my fingers, and I'm hoping they don't go wild card mode. Well, not wild card, but wild card in terms of some of their games. They're starting to get healthy. The bye cannot come any sooner because they need all those players back ASAP. They need a good portion of their players back as soon as possible. Getting in their way of the bye is the Seahawks, as, again, Geno Smith has done wonders for that team. I did see that Tyler Lockett was a DNP, and then DK Metcalf was a DNP as well, but that was just not injury related. It was basically for rest purposes. So the Chargers have to deal with that. Something else I saw in the Broncos game is that J.C. Jackson just was not himself. He was not his efficient self from when he was on the New England Patriots. So for J.C. Jackson, he's got to get fully healed up, and if it means he can't go this week, so be it. Then we got to get him healed up, and then have him rest at the bye as well, and then when it comes to it, we'll see what his status looks like come the Falcons. But I just think he needs a little bit more time to like mesh well with some of the defense, because I saw this. This was actually from an interview with Austin Eckler, and Eckler hit this one right on the head. He says a team can have a lot of talented players on their team, but if they're not meshing well together, then it's not going to really mean a whole lot. And that could be said for both the Chargers and the Broncos. Broncos have a lot of talent on their team, but they're not really meshing well, especially not the offense. Now, the Chargers are kind of the same way, but their defense, I mean, most of their defense is doing good. Like, Khalil Mack looks good. Joey Bosa, when healthy, is going to look good, especially when he returns. Derwin James, I'm so happy he's doing great things. So, overall, for the Chargers, they just need more time to, like, mesh well with one another. The good thing is that they're 4-2, and 4-2 looks respectable, but 5-2 would be... Last week I said 5-2 is probably the target for what they should be in terms of record-wise going into the bye, because once they reach the bye, the second half of their schedule is going to be extremely brutal, as some of their matchups include, off the top of my head, the 49ers, the second half of the AFC West, meaning the Raiders, Broncos, and Chiefs. They've also got the Rams. They've also got the Cardinals, which I don't think is going to be too terrible, but you never know. They just got DeAndre Hopkins back. The Falcons are playing much better, which that's probably their most I wouldn't say easy matchup, but on paper it's kind of their most easy matchup, but it's their most winnable at best. And then they've got the Dolphins, who just got Tua Tagovailoa back. So the second half of the schedule, and they also got the Titans and the Colts, which the Colts are kind of an anomaly. And then the Titans, I think, are playing better, even though they have Tannehill, but I digress. So looking at the Chargers' second half schedule off the top of my head, it's going to be much more challenging than the first half. And even in the first half, some of their winnable games weren't so winnable. Like, the Browns won, they almost gave that one away. The Texans won, they nearly gave that one away. The Jaguars one was a lost cause due to all the injuries. And that's pretty much that. I'm not going to call the Raiders winnable, just because that was week one and everyone was going in cold turkey. And then the Chiefs won, that could have been winnable if the Chargers just took care of their own thing, and that pick six really just hurt the Chargers altogether. So, overall, the Chargers are in a good spot, but 5-2 would get them even in an even better spot. But I can't really complain, considering they have all these injuries, and Troy Aikman said it best. Once Keenan Allen gets back, they're going to be much more better offensively, and I totally agree with that. And I only wish the Chargers' offensive line was even more healthy. I'm kind of wondering if the Chargers will make moves in order to sign or trade for offensive line pieces. But that will be a bridge that the Chargers will cross once they get near the deadline. So this week, in order to beat the Seahawks, they're going to have to slow down Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker, while he did have knee tightness or knee soreness, he was a full participant yesterday in the Seahawks practice. And also stopping DK Metcalf is going to be huge. We'll see who's going to be covering him. If it's Asante Samuel Jr., it's Asante Samuel Jr. If it's Michael Davis, it's Michael Davis. If it's Bryce Callahan, it's Bryce Callahan. But if it's J.C. Jackson, then I hope J.C. Jackson is going to be the one that can keep up with DK Metcalf, because DK Metcalf is literally a speedster. And then we'll see what happens with Tyler Lockett. If Lockett goes, then so be it. But overall, it's not going to be as easy as I thought. In the past, the Chargers have gotten the better of the Seahawks 95% of the time. I think historically, the Seahawks, or when it comes to facing opponents, the Chargers have the best record against the Seahawks. Now, obviously, now that's just in the past. This time around, they're facing a decent team who has a really good head coach in Pete Carroll. And for me, I think it's going to be an uphill climb. And I don't think this will prove to be too big of a factor, but Pete Carroll obviously coming back to Southern California would be kind of a little bit of a homecoming. So we'll see. I have the Chargers winning 30-20. I think that's about as... Actually, no, not 30-20. Let's go a little bit more lighter. Let's go 28-20. That sounds about respectable as it gets. I don't think it'll be too explosive. I think it'll still be a one-score game. Yes, one-score game considering, even though it's 8 points. I don't know about you all, but I feel 8 points shouldn't really be a one-score game. But, I mean, it is just because you have to get a touchdown and then a 2-point conversion. So that is technically considered one score. But I got the Chargers winning 28-20. As long as their defense puts pressure on Geno Smith like they did against Russell Wilson, I think the Chargers could come out on top. I don't think it'll be anywhere easy, especially when they're facing their former player Uchenna Nwosu. That dude is been really good. And one thing that the Chargers are going to need to do is make sure that the left side, they don't have Uchenna Nwosu coming off from the left side, because that's where a majority of Nwosu's tackles have come from. But facing Uchenna Nwosu is going to be his little bit of a revenge game, and I'm really excited to see how, he's done wonders. I think he leads the team in tackles, but overall, Uchenna Nwosu is... I only wish the Chargers could have kept him and Mike Williams, but it is what it is, and I wish him nothing but the best. So for Uchenna Nwosu, stopping him is going to be big time, and I'm excited to see what this matchup has in store. The Chargers winning would also benefit the Rams, just because it would keep the Seahawks off their tail. So there's that right there. But overall, I have the Chargers winning 28-20. I think that's about as respectable and mostly accurate as it gets. But we'll see what happens in this little matchup. I really think the Chargers have a good shot. I know they're coming off of a short week, but last year when they played the Raiders and then eventually the Browns, they were able to come out on top in that Browns matchup despite having to play on a short week. So we'll see what happens this week. I have some confidence in the Chargers. I really just want them to get to the bye without any more injuries. I think they've kind of turned the corner from that last matchup from their matchup against the Jaguars. Again, that matchup against the Jaguars, it was just a lost cause with Justin Herbert not being 100%, Keenan Allen not taking the field, and then them losing players just like flies in terms of injuries. So this week, it's kind of a big week for the Chargers just because 5-2, it gives them a whole lot of confidence going into the bye week, and then going into that matchup against Atlanta, that would make things even more... It would make things even more better in terms of confidence and knowing where they're at. Because after they play the Falcons, they have the Niners, so they're going to be on the road for the next 2 games, even though they're technically on the road for a majority of the season in terms of their crowd. Anyway, but I'm looking at the Chargers schedule right now. 4 of their 5 games when coming back from the bye are on the road. Meaning they're facing the Falcons on the road, the Niners on the road, the Cardinals on the road, and then the Raiders on the road as well. Their only home game is going to be against the Chiefs, which, when it comes to NFC West or AFC West opponents on the road, Patrick Mahomes doesn't really lose a whole lot of those. Matter of fact, he has not lost to an AFC West opponent on the road, which is the crazy stat of the day right there. I'm hoping the Chargers could be the first one to change that narrative, but it's going to be tough. So we'll see. All right, but that's enough for the Chargers. I've spent a lot of time on the Chargers, even though they are my team, and I'm hoping they're able to turn it around, well, fully turn it around. They're starting to get together, but for me, I think they could do a whole lot better. Currently they're tied with the Chiefs in the AFC West, and I think they and the Chiefs are the only... Oh no, the Cowboys are also 4-2 as well. I thought the Chargers were the only 4-2 teams in the league, but the Jets, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, and the Chargers are all 4-2. All right, now that's enough for the NFL portion of the show. Let's go to college football, and unfortunately I have to take the bandage off in painful fashion. So UCLA had a bye. We don't need to really talk about them a whole lot, and same with San Diego State. So the only one that really got to play was USC, and USC sadly lost in heartbreaking fashion last week as they lost to Utah 43-42. Long story short, USC had like a 14-point lead in the first half. Utah trimmed it down to 7. Utah got the ball to start the second half. Utah tied it up. Then it was just a game of back and forth. USC led, Utah tied. USC led, Utah tied. USC led. And then Utah, on their final offensive drive, they eventually got the go-ahead touchdown from Cam Rising. And then Rising and the Utes went for 2. And unfortunately for USC, they could not stop Cam Rising. This dude was just all over the place. He led the team in rushing with 60 yards, even though that's not really much. But he had 3 touchdowns in terms of running the ball. And in terms of passing, he had 415 passing yards for 2 touchdowns. He was 30 for 44, which I thought was good. And unfortunately for USC, they were unable to get the win. They did have a good return when it came to their final drive. They had a good kickoff return, but there was an illegal block in the back, which... Now, if you don't know, illegal block in the backs in terms of college is actually a spot foul, which is not good. So it looked like the USC was going to eventually have the ball at the 50. They eventually had to have the ball at like around their own 20, deep within their territory. And eventually the USC was unable to pull off the win, which was not fun times. And what was even worse is that Jordan Addison hurt his knee, and we don't know the status of it. So, while it is sad that USC lost that game to Utah, I really was just bummed. It's like, no, USC lost. And at the time, I was like, well, USC lost, and now the Chargers can hurt me if they somehow lose to Denver, which was not the case. But USC losing was just such a big bummer. But one person that did reply to my tweet saying, I never thought I'd see the day Lincoln Riley and USC would get outfoxed against Utah. Well, someone did. This person, I don't know who this person was who replied, but he said that it was going to be tough. It's tough to win at Utah, and basically USC is still growing, and I totally agreed with that. It's like, yeah, beating Utah at Utah was going to be a major climb. Here's the thing about Utah. Playing at Utah is so tough just because, well, altitude is much more different than it is in California, and then the crowd is raucous and spirited, and then obviously Cam Rising is a hell of a quarterback. Excuse my French. So overall for USC, they were going to have to play practically flawless, which they did. It's like I don't think they had a turnover in the game. Yeah, they didn't have a turnover, and I understand the frustration from USC fans. Everyone was saying USC got gypped by the refs, because I did see that there was a roughing the passer call after Rising threw an interception in the end zone, which could have ended the game, but then it was roughing the passer, and I don't even think that was too bad of a hit, but the USC shouldn't have even been in that situation. Like, it shouldn't have gotten to that point. And whether it was truly roughing the passer or not, it shouldn't have gotten to the point where Utah was within 1 score. So, again, it really sucks. I really would have liked to see USC win. This would have been a major statement win, and this could have gotten USC even closer to winning the Pac-12, or in terms of making the Pac-12 championship game. But unfortunately for them, this is going to go down as a stinging loss. It's not too bad of a loss, though. I mean, Utah is a very good team, and if they play at the Coliseum, USC is winning that one 9 times out of 10. I don't care what anyone says. USC at the Coliseum will give Utah fits. I don't care how many fans Utah is bringing. And I understand Utah beat USC at the Coliseum last year, but that was when USC was in shambles. This year, USC is much better than what everyone thinks. USC is much better than last year, but unfortunately, they just could not handle Utah. It was just a tough one. the good news is for USC is that they're not out of the running in terms of the Pac-12 championship race. What's the bad news is for USC is that the new leader of the Pac-12 is UCLA/Oregon, which I'll get into that a little bit later. But tough one for USC as they fell to number 12 in the AP coaches poll, as I think they went from 7 to 12. So they only went down 5 spots. But overall, it was just a very tough loss. And now Utah has the tiebreaker over them. And looking at Utah's schedule, some of their tougher... Okay, they get 2 tough games. They have Washington State this week, which is... Oh, I'm sorry. They have Washington State next week. Utah's on a bye. They have Washington State next week. Then on the 19th, Utah plays at Oregon, which... Who does USC want to win more? The better question is, who does USC want to lose more? But anyway, USC is on a bye this week. I think they kind of need the bye just to wash the bad loss off their skin, and also to get healthy. They really need this bye, and hopefully if they do have injuries. If they do have injuries, then they need to get everyone healed up as soon as possible. And Larry B., I totally agree with you. I still can't believe USC lost. Because I was seeing the game, and I saw USC was up 21-7, and I'm like, okay, as long as USC just matches Utah score for score or touchdown for touchdown, they'll maintain their 14-point lead, and they should be in good shape. USC did not get that memo, and they allowed Utah to come alive in that second half. And my thing was, I knew Utah was going to possibly go for 2, because you don't play for overtime. You play to win the game. And when I saw that USC was up 42-35, I'm like, please don't give up another touchdown. And then I'm thinking, wait, if Utah gets the clock down to the point where they go for 2 and they don't leave USC a whole lot of time to go down the field, and they actually complete the 2-point conversion, that could be bad for USC. And that was exactly what happened. I don't want to blame the refs. I'm not going to be that guy that blames the refs. I understand USC fans are frustrated with all of the calls, or with some of the calls. I understand Lincoln Riley is frustrated, but it shouldn't get to the point where Utah is within striking distance, and it shouldn't get to the point where one call from the ref makes the difference. So overall, it's a heartbreaking loss, but it'll only be stinging. It's only a stinging loss if USC dwells on it. So what they have to do is they have to just move on from it. You looking at the rest of USC's schedule going before the UCLA game. USC has a lot of winnable games. They have they have Arizona, which should be winnable, even though, Arizona's young. They have talent, but they're very young. They have Cal, which just lost to Colorado. No, nothing more needs to be said. They need to win that one. And then they also have Colorado, which, although it is on a Friday, there's no way in heck USC is losing to Colorado. They have not lost to Colorado in its program's history, especially when the two were in the Pac-12. So the only way USC loses to Colorado is if they look ahead to UCLA. But that ain't happening. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So overall, I still think USC can make the Pac-12 championship game. But now they're going to have to run the table. They're going to have to learn from their mistakes. They have to pull a J.C. Jackson. They have to be the first ones in the building, and then they have to be the last ones out the building, especially the defense. The defense cannot give up 43 points a night. The defense, while it has improved, it still has its flaws, as they gave up 42 to Utah. They gave up 25 to Arizona State without Jaden Daniels. They gave up 28 to Stanford, and that's pretty much it. Most of their other games have been decent. The Washington State game was good, even though it kind of took the second half to get them back together. The Oregon State one, the defense shined in that one, which was a surprise. Fresno State, the Fresno State quarterback got knocked out, which that kind of swung the momentum all the way to USC. And then the Rice one, we don't care about Rice just because if USC can't win that one convincingly, then there's a problem. But USC should be able to handle Arizona, Cal, and Colorado. While they do look good on paper, it does not mean they have to underestimate those teams. They cannot underestimate Arizona, Cal, and Colorado. All they just need to do is just go in with a clear eyes, full heart mentality and just freaking do the darn thing. So that is pretty much that for USC. Now jumping back into your regularly scheduled program in terms of the other Pac-12 teams, UCLA returns from its bye week as this week they play Oregon. So Saturday they play Oregon at 12:30 p.m. They're playing on Fox. Here's my thing. So, UCLA is still unbeaten. They're the only unbeaten team from the Pac-12, which, gonna give them a little golf clap. And I do admit I was wrong about UCLA. I thought UCLA was going to stumble when it came to Utah and Washington, but UCLA has turned the corner. Now they face another big challenge in facing Oregon at Autzen Stadium. Here's my thing. Every time I think I have UCLA figured out, they always find a way to basically have to change their identity. So for UCLA, this would be a huge win for them. And outside of the USC matchup, they don't really have any other true boogeyman matchups. But for Oregon, it's going to be a very tough challenge, as Oregon is starting to play better. They don't look like their Oregon self from when they played Georgia. That was basically a lost cause. And also, Oregon, they did need to rally to take down... they did need to rally to take down Washington State, but Oregon looks legit. They look much better. But that being said, I think UCLA has gotten it fully together, and unless it comes down to UCLA having to win on the last play of the game, I have UCLA winning. This week, I'm going to pick UCLA. I am not going to fall into the trap of UCLA is a pretender. I think UCLA pulls off the win here, and it's going to be close, though. I think UCLA wins 42-35. As much as I don't want a high-scoring affair, and as much as I think Oregon might bring its full-on defense, I think UCLA is going to have to win in high-scoring affair. They had to do so against Utah, and now they're going to have to do so this week against Oregon. If they do beat Oregon, then they put themselves in a good position to make the Pac-12 championship. Barring any upsets, and even if they do lose to USC, UCLA would put themselves, even with one loss, in a good position to win the Pac-12 champion, or to make it to the Pac-12 championship. Because if you remember, the Pac-12 scrapped the whole Pac-12 South versus Pac-12 North thing, and now it's basically the top two teams in the Pac-12 face one another come playoff time, or come the championship time, and then eventually it goes from there. But I got UCLA winning this week, and I'm not even going to have my heart versus my mind pick. I'm just going to say UCLA wins 42-35. DTR is going to continue to be a beast at quarterback. Zach Charbonnet is going to run rampant all over the Ducks defense, and I have no doubt in my mind. Like, UCLA has turned me into a believer. As a USC guy, I didn't want to believe in UCLA, but now I'm a believer. And no, I'm not going to sing the whole little song from Smash Mouth or whoever originally did it, but I got UCLA winning, and nothing is going to change my mind. Nothing. Alright, that's pretty much going to do it for the UCLA portion of the show. Now we got to get into the black sheep of the SoCal FBS teams, San Diego State. So San Diego State had a bye, which is good times, as this week they play Nevada, who is 2-5. If they continue to roll on the Jalen Maiden train, they're in good shape. Please, please, please don't go back to the other quarterback. Like, continue to do what you did last week against Hawaii, and don't win in ugly fashion. Win in fashion of you need to actually have a balanced offense Like, please, we don't want to see another close game. I don't think you San Diego State fans want to see another close game. Though the previous week when San Diego State played Hawaii, they actually threw the ball more. So all I ask from you, Brady Hoke, is this. Please have a balanced offense. I get it the previous week when you played Hawaii, you basically passed the ball more than ran the ball. Congratulations on doing that. Congratulations on finally getting your head out the sand when it came to having a better offense. Now you got to basically have a more balanced offense. And please don't waste Jalen Mayden's effort from last week. Roll with him. Just have him throw the ball more. Just don't be that type of offense that just runs the ball more often than not. Like, do you know how much I hate that? It hasn't worked. It didn't work against Boise State. It's not going to work going forward. Everyone knows your game plan, except not really. You have to freaking please just balance out your offense. No more running the ball 75% of the time to 25% passing. Please just try to balance it. And if you can, please also just have Jalen Mayden, get Jalen Mayden more involved. Like last week when you played Hawaii, you did excellent. And don't make it to the point where the defense has to bail your butts out for the umpteenth time. Because for those that don't know, San Diego State is basically always close game after close game after close game. You all think the Chargers play close games or the Broncos play close games. San Diego State has been playing close games since last season, and it's either been them having to kick a game-winning field goal or them having the defense have to make a crucial stop to make sure the offense either A, turns it over on downs, B, turns it over entirely, or C, gets to the point where they have to punt. All right, so they play Nevada. It's at Nevada. I don't know how to... Here's the thing about Nevada. I don't know too much about Nevada, and I feel this could be a looks could be deceiving game. It's basically going to be a Mountain West Conference game at night, Mountain West Conference game after dark, as it looks like they're mainly more of a passing team, but their quarterback hasn't even thrown for too many passing yards, as he's only thrown for 2 passing touchdowns, and he has a pick. So I imagine Nevada might be running the ball more, or at least getting to the point where they get their running back, Tua, to the point where he gets into the end zone for the score. Yeah, and Larry B said it best. San Diego State frustrates me. Yes, they frustrate me a lot, and it's just infuriating offensively. It's like, I can't stand their offensive ineptitude. It just really makes me want to pull my hair out. It really does. I've had it up to here with San Diego State's offensive ineptitude. And them having the defense bail them out practically every game. So against Nevada, I don't know how to predict this one. Again, I don't know much about Nevada. I'm just going to still stick with my bread and butter score. I think San Diego State wins 17-14. I think it comes, once again, I don't want this to happen, but I think San Diego State goes down to the wire for the millionth time, and they have to kick the go-ahead field goal and win it. But I have San Diego State winning 17-14. I think it's going to be a defensive battle. I think both these offenses are going to be stuck in quicksand. I think it could resemble the Broncos-Chargers or Broncos-Colts game, but I have San Diego State winning 17-14, and I have them getting back above 500, just because looking at their schedule, they play Fresno State for the oil can next week, which I don't know what the status is on Fresno State's quarterback, but if he's not available, then we'll see. UNLV is obviously licking their wounds. They play Notre Dame this week, so obviously they're going to want to rest. I think they're going to rest their starters, because if you didn't hear Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson this past Tuesday, he thinks that the star players that are banged up for UNLV, they should rest up. But we'll see what happens come Saturday, November 5th. And then San Diego State has San Jose State, New Mexico, and Air Force to close out the season. So if if San Diego State wants to make it to the Pac or the Mountain West Conference Championship, they're going to have to run the table, which would include beating UNLV and then San Jose State and then Fresno State. Like, they still have a chance. However, their margin of error is very slim, especially since a lot of these, we don't know a whole lot about these teams. I just think that all these teams are an anomaly, and some of these teams have their ups and downs, and their good games and their bad games. But for me, San Diego State has to pretty much run the table if they want to find themselves in the Mountain West Conference Championship. And they'll most likely play Boise State again, which, Boise State, oh my god, that's going to be a brutal matchup if they play Boise. But we'll see. So that is going to do it for the San Diego State portion of this show. We definitely got to get into a little San Diego in terms of, or USD, as, did they even play last week? I don't know if they did. But either way, I want to say San Diego did play last week, but if they did, then so be it. But if they didn't, then it is what it is. Like, we definitely also got to discuss Cal Poly, as this week they're on bye, and I guess last week they were on bye as well. So they have two bye weeks. What? That's weird. Oh no, last week they beat Presbyterian 28-3. Sorry, Falcons fans. So yeah, San Diego beat Presbyterian 28-3. As this week they're on bye. They didn't have a bye last week, but they technically kind of did have a bye because they played Presbyterian. No offense to Presbyterian fans, but that practically might have been the closest thing to a bye. No offense, of course. Anyway, so San Diego hits the road next week when they play St. Thomas of Minnesota. Then they play Butler and Davidson at San Diego the next 2 weeks. And then they finish off the season against Morehead State. Looking at the Toreros in the standings, a win over St. Thomas would be crucial, but they're 5-1. So time will tell if the Toreros can get it together. If they do, then awesome. But if not, then I'm not going to get my hopes up. Remember, this is San Diego, and they have been losing in San Diego fashion for quite a bit. And then over to Cal Poly. Cal Poly lost to Idaho State 40-31. Okay, I'm done. I'm done with Cal Poly. Okay, I'm just kidding. Cal Poly lost to Idaho State 40-31. I don't know what's going on with the Mustangs. Like, ever since they beat San Diego, they haven't been themselves. Like, you can't play San Diego like all the time, especially since San Diego will probably eventually, find their way back to relevancy. So this week, Cal Poly plays Eastern Washington. They're 0-3 and they're 1-2. If Cal Poly finds a way to lose, they're 1-5 overall and they're 0-3, just like Cal Poly. If Cal Poly finds some way to lose, you also have to remember, Cal Poly lost to a then winless Idaho State team. I don't know what's going on with Cal Poly, but I'm just going to say this. If Cal Poly finds some way to lose to Eastern Washington, they got to tank the rest of the season. Because I don't know how much more Cal Poly fans can take of this, but they have to win. Please don't disappoint me, Cal Poly. Like, otherwise we will roast you. And by we, I mean myself. I will find a way to roast you. Alright, but that's going to do it for the college football portion of the show. We are nearly an hour into the show. We're going to take a break. Going to come back, talk some MLB. Going to talk some NWSL. Going to talk some MLS, some NHL, and a little NBA. Then we've got the Dum Dum of the Week. So keep it locked here. You're listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Some say that Indiana is just a flyover state. Flatlands and cornfields, barns and country roads. What if I told you Indiana is the crossroads of America? What if I told you in all other states, basketball is just basketball? In Indiana, basketball is life. Crowded high school basketball gyms on a Friday night, and every barn with a basketball rim and a frayed, worn-out net. If you're interested in the heartbeat of America, and if you're interested in sports, if you have Hoosier running through your veins, the Crossroads Pod with Aaron X is made for you. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Each and every week, the Crossroad Pod covers all of Indiana sports. The pride of the horseshoe of the Indianapolis Colts. The blue-collar gold swagger of the Indiana Pacers. The relentless pursuit of the sixth banner for the Indiana Hoosiers. The swing of the hammer of the Purdue Boilermakers. The swoop of the Cardinals of Ball State. The summoning of the echoes of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The growl of the Bulldogs of Butler. The intensity of an Indiana fever. The chop of the Indianapolis Indians. At the Crossroads Pod, if it is Indiana, we've got you covered. More than cornfields. More than country back roads. The Crossroads of America. Join me, Aaron X, every week. It's nothing but net.
College football, and do you want to hear a college football show dedicated to all that is college football, including junior college and the CCCAA and the NJCAA, the NAIA, and the NCAA, including Division III, Division II, Division I AA in the FCS, and Division I A in the FBS? Well then look no further. Join myself, Larry B., and my colleagues, Mr. H-Town Blake Henley, and Mr. Christian Espinoza, each week during the college football season for the latest in college football on 3 and Out College Edition, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our shows, such as 3 and Out College Edition with Larry B. and yours truly. That'll be going live this Saturday at 7 a.m. Pacific Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Also, following that, we have the Crossroads Pod, which goes on an hour after. And then we have Let's Whine About Sports with Mike Pat, who just popped in the chat room. As we welcome him, thank you for popping in. And he says, the Chargers were never my pick to win the Super Bowl. Still have the Bills representing the AFC. That's a respectable, response. I think it's a respectable pick as well, just because the Bills are pretty much a complete team. If their defense gets healthy, then they're going to be much better come playoff time. And I'm going to be interested to see what they look like against the Chiefs the second go-around. Because the Chiefs were missing players as well, but I digress on that. As we also welcome Aaron X into the chat room, he says, hope you're having a great show, Teran. Chargers have not been good as I had expected, but year is still early. Yeah, they haven't. Just because, they got banged up. They were super banged up against the Jaguars. The Chiefs game, they were in that one. They should have probably won that one, but unfortunately, they fell apart and whatnot, especially after that pick six. But the season is still early, and a win over the Seahawks would make me feel a little bit more at ease going into the second half of the season. But that is going to do. But I already discussed pretty much all things football. Let's discuss some MLS action. As the Galaxy, it's been a long journey for the Galaxy this season. As oh my God, they have. It looked as if they weren't going to make the playoffs, but they actually did make the playoffs, and it made me happy. And they made the playoffs as a 4 seed, and they took down Nashville 1-0 this past weekend on Saturday, as Julian Araujo was able to knock in the go-ahead goal. And the stoppage time was practically the longest stoppage time in all of Galaxy history. But then again, that's basically the new norm. That's basically the norm when you're a soccer fan and you're having to witness basically stoppage time when your team is holding a 1-0 lead. So, Mike, I'm sorry, Mike. He says, this DC United fan does not want to discuss MLS. Poor Mike and DC United. It's all good, Mike. I'll leave the DC United. I'll try to make this as painless as possible. So the Galaxy move on to the second round of the MLS playoffs, and they get a big boy. I should also make note that all of the top 4 teams, or the 2 through 4 seeds, advance to the second round, as Austin FC advance and Dallas FC also advance. So Austin versus Texas in the second round, and then the Galaxy, they have their second round matchup tonight against none other than LAFC in El Tráfico round 3. So this will be the third installment of El Tráfico, and boy howdy, it's going to be a big one. I saw El Tráfico on TV. I basically saw him on I think it was like ESPN or ESPN2, and I'm like, ooh, I get to finally see the Galaxy on national TV, and it was quite the game. It was basically just loud, roaring crowd, basically beating of the drums, though I'm probably sure that's probably their band, and then chants going on from not like chants, but like war songs going on throughout the entire game, and I'm like, I've been missing this a whole lot, my goodness. Anyway, I think El Tráfico round 3 is going to be a barn burner, and I would not be surprised if the Galaxy pulled off an upset, but I would also not be surprised to see LAFC just steamrolling the Galaxy, just because LAFC has a lot of expectations. They have so many good expectations. Like, you look at LAFC's roster, it is stacked from top to bottom. This is basically LAFC's best chance to win the entire MLS Cup. If they find some way to lose before they even reach the final, this will go down as probably the worst team in MLS history. Because remember, LAFC won the Commissioner's Shield, so it's like your team did all that winning just to lose in the second round. Because you also got to remember that LAFC had a bye, because MLS takes the top 7 teams in each conference, and then the number 1 seed gets a bye. It's kind of like the NFL playoffs. So I kind of think that's a good adopted rule right there, unless eventually they want to get rid of byes. But overall, I think it's it could go either way. When it comes to rivalry games or in-state rivalries, all bets are off. Just throw out the records and just see where it's going to be at. The site for this game, or the site for El Tráfico Round 3, is going to be at the Bank of California Stadium. So, overall for LAFC, they have a lot to play for. Meanwhile, for the Galaxy, they're playing with house money. They don't have a lot to lose, but they have so much more to gain. As Mike says, it's all good. I'm used to my favorite teams being lame. I would just be mad if my team won 110 games in MLB and got knocked out of the divisional series. Mike decides to go down that route, and I guess that's a perfect segue to go into the MLB. But to close out the MLS, I think it's going to be a great game tonight between LAFC and the LA Galaxy. If the Galaxy manage to win, then we're going to be seeing lots of memes when it comes to LAFC. But if LAFC wins, then it's going to be no surprise. It'll still be a good season regardless for the Galaxy. Considering the Galaxy were on the verge of not making the playoffs, considering they had a great first half of the season, they were playing horribly in the second half of the season, and then they finally rose to power come late in the regular season. It's an accomplishment for the Galaxy. They just have to go baby steps. And this also means that the Galaxy are basically on the road throughout most of the playoffs, because even if they do beat LAFC this round, they'll either face Austin or Dallas FC in the in the conference finals come the next round. Just because Dallas and Austin are both seated higher than the Galaxy. But jumping over to the MLB, oh boy. The MLB playoffs in terms of the National League is on one spiked cocktail. So, as we all know, the Padres, last time we were talking about the Padres and the Dodgers, the series was 1-1. Then the Padres decided to run the table the rest of the way and gentleman sweep the Dodgers as they wound up beating the Dodgers in the next two games, which I was stunned, to say the least. So, in Game 3, the Padres defeated the Dodgers 2-1. So, basically, the Padres led and they never relinquished it, as the Dodgers just could not get any runs going, which I'm pretty sure they left. I want to say the Dodgers left a lot of guys on base, but yeah, it was just not. The bats were just not coming on for the Dodgers in Game 3. And then after when I got home from work, I basically said I got home from work, but Padres, man, they have the Dodgers on the verge of elimination. And I basically said to my followers, if the Dodgers somehow do lose to the Padres in the NLDS, are they the worst MLB team in the playoffs? Well, one person responded to me. They said it all depends on what my expectations are, or what my requirement. Basically, it all depends on what my vision is of describing the worst team in the playoffs. But he was respectable about it. He said the Dodgers are a good team, and the Padres just have to play their sound baseball. Go Padres. And then there was this other person that responded to my tweet. He said, nah. He actually said, nah, the Dodgers are not the worst team in the MLB playoffs. Or they would not be the worst team in the MLB playoffs. And that honor would go to this year's Mets, which basically the Mets have had many postseason collapses, and they basically have, and this year's postseason collapse was Exhibit A for the Mets. I think that's a respectable answer, and this actually came from a Padres fan. He even said, even though I rag on the Dodgers and I'm a hater toward the Dodgers, I think the Mets have that honor. And I think that's a very respectable answer coming from a Padres fan. So I want to give a shout out to those two that responded to the tweet that said, would the Dodgers be the worst team to lose in the postseason? I finally got my answer, because the Dodgers lost to the Padres 5-3 in Game 4, and the Padres advanced to the NLCS. So early on, the Dodgers were leading 3-1, I'm sorry, not 3-1, 3-0, going through to the bottom of the 7th, and I'm thinking, all right, Dodgers are going to force a Game 5, and we're going to get a lot of dramatics, and I get to see the Dodgers and Padres. Little did the Dodgers know the Padres decided to turn on the gas, as they basically scored 5 runs in the bottom of the 7th inning, and the Dodgers simply just could not recover. It was just bad, and I don't know what happened. I don't really know what went wrong for the Dodgers. I don't know if their bats just went silent or if their pitching was just not bad, but my goodness, this has to be one of the more disappointing teams in the MLB playoffs. I understand the Mets have had postseason collapses, and that there have been probably other teams, even like the Detroit Tigers from 2013, but I don't know. This one probably has to take the cake. Like, this team won 111 games and wound up losing in the divisional round, despite having a bye, and they only won one playoff game entirely. Now imagine if the Dodgers got swept by the Padres. That would have been even worse. So, and I know many people are saying, well, why not cancel the playoffs and crown the Dodgers as champions? Well, you actually have to win through the playoffs, and the playoffs are a whole different animal. Basically, the Dodgers went full Peyton Manning mode, and this is Peyton Manning without the rings, and I actually referenced that where someone I actually did say that the Dodgers were Peyton Manning without the rings, and someone said, well, the Peyton Manning ring back when he won with the Colts was because they faced a iffy Bears team, and then the other one was because the defense bailed him out in Super Bowl 50. Well, I guess that's a good way to put it if you're not a Peyton Manning fan. Someone described the Dodgers as the Buffalo Bills in terms of the MLB. Now, that would imply that the Dodgers haven't won anything, but they have in the past. So I don't think we can qualify that that could really qualify as, being a good comparison. I just think the Dodgers have had lots of talent, but then they've kind of whiffed in the playoffs. I mean, I guess you could also describe the Dodgers as last year's San Francisco Giants, but the Giants were practically hot and cold, and the Dodgers were basically on their coattails majority of the season. Oh, my bad, Aaron. I totally forgot Aaron X was in the chat room, and my apologies, Aaron. I forgot he's a Colts fan, so yeah, that's my bad. Whoops. I guess I should have just described the Dodgers as last year's San Francisco Giants, which I think is totally respectable. I think that's the perfect comparison, just because the Giants wound up losing in the divisional series to the Dodgers, and funny enough, the Dodgers wound up losing to an NL West opponent in the Padres, so it kind of comes full circle. But overall, that is basically the end of the Dodgers season. This is why I did not want to see the Dodgers and the Padres in the NLDS, because one team basically advances to the NLCS while the other team goes home, which makes me sad. And unfortunately, the Dodgers were on the short end of the stick. So, to the Padres, they advanced to the NLCS. They lost Game 1 on Tuesday. They lost 2-0, which, my goodness. If anyone had Phillies and Padres in the NLCS, take a bow. But these are both two teams of destiny, as the Phillies lost to the Padres 2-0 on Tuesday, and then yesterday the Padres wound up winning Game 2, winning 8-5. So this is the best 4 out of 7 series. So basically, you win 4 games, you advance. So next game is going to be on Friday at 4:37 p.m. Pacific time. Padres hit the road to the land of the Liberty Bell to take on the Phillies. I would call it the land of brotherly love, but I don't think they're going to get any brotherly love from the Phillies. And then Saturday, the Padres hit the road, or will stay at Philadelphia to take on Philly at 4:45 p.m. Pacific time. Then it goes, and the format is 2-3-2. So it's basically 2 games for the higher seed, and then 3 games for the lower seed, and then 2 games for the higher seed. And then on Sunday, the Padres will still stay in Philly to take on the Phillies at 11:37 a.m. Pacific time. I guess that's to like not conflict with the NFL, just because NFL is king. And then if Game 6 and Game 7 are necessary, knock on wood, the two would actually be facing on Monday and Tuesday. So that's an interesting concept. Basically, if a Game 6 or 7 is necessary, basically, well, it can't be necessary already, but if a Game 6 is necessary, the two teams have to travel from Philadelphia to San Diego, and then they would play at 5:03, which I guess it gives them enough time to like rest up and maybe prepare. But overall, that does seem a little iffy, if you ask me. Just having the two teams go from a game, wash up, pack their bags, and then go back to San Diego for another game. I just think that's a lot of gameplay, and I think everything's like so crammed in. It kind of reminds me of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament, but I digress on that. But I'm hoping the Padres can keep it going on the SoCal train. It's been a great week it was a great week for San Diego sports entirely, as that's going to segue into the next topic being the NWSL. So Wave FC was the only SoCal team to make it into the NWSL playoffs, as Angel City sadly, unfortunately, missed the cut. But Wave FC did get revenge on the team that denied Angel City a spot in the playoffs, and that was the Chicago Red Stars, as they won 2-1 in extra time. So Chicago scored early in the 10th minute, courtesy of Yuki Nagasoto, and I'm just thinking, oh no, please get a goal. And then San Diego was able to get a goal from Emily Van Egmond in the 67th minute, so it was tied up at 1-1. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough time, as regulation expired and both teams went into extra time. So the referees added 15 more minutes, and if you all don't know, it's basically 90-minute game in regulation, and then adding 15 more minutes, it's basically 105 minutes. And then I guess they added like extra time before overtime occurred. So in overtime, if you score the first goal, you don't automatically win. You basically get the lead. I was not aware of this. I thought in soccer it was basically golden goal wins, but at 15 minutes of added extra time, Alex Morgan, of all players, knocked in the game-winning goal, or the go-ahead goal, at the 110th minute. Basically, there was 5 minutes left of extra time, and then at the end of extra time, San Diego Wave FC came out victorious. And it was their first ever playoff win, just because San Diego is basically an expansion team. They and Los Angeles are both expansion teams, and the fact that San Diego Wave FC was able to win its first ever playoff game in its team's history makes me happy. So, Wave FC advances to the semifinals where they take on Portland. So, it's another matchup against Portland, as San Diego won the most recent matchup 2-0, and then they tied with Portland in that infamous, dreadful no VAR game, which saw a goal not being called, which I'm not going to discuss it. I already have discussed it 1,000 times on how the NWSL should input VAR or have some sort of indication of if the ball goes into the goal, which is complete BS. So, this week, Wave FC plays at Portland. It's going to be on Sunday at 2 p.m. Here's my thing. It's going to be a difficult matchup just because Portland is perennially a very good team. And my thing for Wave FC is they're going to have to play a full game, and they're going to have to make sure Portland does not get any scoring opportunities or any chances to extend the game and make sure this would be a living nightmare. Because the longer Portland is in the game, the longer it is to close them out. But overall, I think it's going to be a great matchup between Wave FC and Portland. I think it's going to be a fight to the finish, and I'm hoping Wave FC comes out on top. I'm not even going to make a prediction just because I don't know a whole lot about soccer, but keep it going, Wave FC. You're still one of our few hopes of seeing a pro championship come back to San Diego. Like, please, please, please just get the job done, Wave FC. That is going to do it for the NWSL portion of this show. We're going to jump into some NHL, and as always, the Ducks are being dreadful as always. So, remember when the Ducks won their season opener against the Seattle Kraken? Yeah, their road trip has been absolutely brutal to them. Last Saturday, they lost to the New York Islanders 7-1. Monday, they lost to the New York Rangers 6-4. And then Tuesday, they lost to the New Jersey Devils 4-2. Tonight, they are in Beantown to take on the Boston Bruins. And then on Sunday, they are hitting the road to the Motor City to take on the Detroit Red Wings. That game is actually going to be nationally televised on ESPN, which I think the NWSL should be nationally televised on, but I digress. So that's going to be an interesting affair right there. And then next Wednesday, the Ducks will also be playing on national TV when they take on the Tampa Bay Lightning, which the Lightning have kind of struggled out the gate as well, but that's nowhere near the comparison of the Ducks. And then next Friday, the Ducks will be hitting the road to Sin City to take on the Las Vegas Golden Knights. So yeah, as you could see, the Ducks are already having tough sledding so far. Not fun times. It's not fun times to be a Ducks fan entirely. And then as for the LA Kings, they lost their season opener to the Kraken 4-1, but they rebounded in big-time fashion, defeating the Minnesota Wild 7-6, and that wasn't even needed, and overtime wasn't even needed. So good for the Kings. And then, they lost to the Golden Knights, and then they also lost to the Kraken. So I forgot the Kings played on Tuesday, so they had that first opening night. And then they took on the Kraken, and then they lost that one. So now the Kings have won 3 in a row. They beat the Wild last Saturday 7-6. They beat the Red Wings on Monday in overtime 5-4. And the Kings actually won the NHL's first shootout of the season, as they managed to beat the Nashville Predators 4-3 in a shootout. So good job to the Kings. The Kings will remain on the road as they have the Pittsburgh Penguins as they head down to Steel City to take on the Penguins tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And then on Saturday, the Kings head down to the nation's capital to take on the Washington Capitals on Saturday. Then the Kings return home to host the Tampa Bay Lightning, so the Ducks and the Kings get to host the Lightning. Then the Kings host the Jets on next Thursday, and then next Saturday the Kings host the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, unlike the Ducks, the Kings are actually doing well on their road trip. They're 3 for 3. If they win this, if they beat the Penguins and the Capitals, or at least get points out of those matchups, then that's a win right there for the Kings. Because playing on the road is super tough. And Larry, poor Larry. He says the Ducks are very irritating. Very, very, very irritating. And I hope we don't get destroyed by Boston today. I hope so too. I hope that the Ducks are able to upend the Bruins. Just please, I would like to see the Ducks be competent. Like, please. I'm sick and tired of seeing the Ducks underachieve. Like, last year was the even worse way, just because they were looking good early on, and then they wound up peeing the bed as they kept losing game after game. And I don't even think they wound up winning. I don't even think they were salvaging points. They just kept losing game after game, and then it got to the point where their losing streak was insurmountable to their record of getting back on track. It's kind of like the Angels this season, where they were looking good early on, and then they wound up losing like 14 in a row, and they just couldn't get back to their winning ways. And that was kind of the heartbreaking thing when you look at it if you're a Ducks or a Angels fan. And I'm sorry if I have to bring that up to Ducks and Angels fans, especially Larry, but it is what it is. So that's going to do it for the NHL portion of the show. Jumping on over to the NBA. Yes, the NBA kicks off this week, and as a Laker fan, I'm just going to say this on record. I'm not looking forward to this season. The Lakers are practically in full tank mode or full rebuild mode, as They had their first game of the season. They lost to the Warriors 123-109. The only thing that I'm surprised at is that the Lakers didn't lose by more, as they lost by 14. And apparently my friends were making jokes about how the Lakers had a guy from DoorDash starting in terms of the season opener against the Warriors. I understand there are 81 more games left for the Lakers, but this is very alarming and concerning. So the Lakers will head back home to the Crypto.com arena. I'm still going to not like saying that. As we welcome Cale Henderson in the chat room. He says, "What's up, bro?" Nothing much. Just talking some NBA about the Lakers. As the Lakers take on the Clippers tonight at the Crypto.com arena at 7 p.m. Okay, one of the goals that I have for the Lakers is if the Lakers make the playoffs, it's considered a win. That would be an accomplishment. If the Lakers beat the Clippers this season, that would also be an accomplishment. Because last year, the Lakers got swept in terms of facing the Clippers, and it was just it was complete dog do. So this time around, the Lakers, I at least want to see the Lakers beating the Clippers once. It's going to be tough because, well, the Lakers are a complete mess, and the Clippers, to the Lakers fans' dismay, they get back Kawhi Leonard, but I have been hearing Kawhi Leonard is slated to come off the bench, which, as we all know, he missed the entirety of last season due to a torn ACL, torn meniscus. Either way, he missed all of last season, and we're going to have to see what happens with the Clippers going forward. It's still not going to be an easy game, regardless of if Kawhi was going to play or not. They still have Paul George and a bunch of other talented players like Reggie Jackson and whatnot. So, for the Clippers, they return to action on Saturday when they play the Kings at Sacramento. And then on Sunday, the Lakers return to action following their game against the Clippers when they take on the Portland Trail Blazers. So, yeah. That's a brutal 3-game stretch for the Lakers starting off. And I'll put a hold on the NBA for a minute and read Kale's comment. He says, "Quack, quack, quack. Looks like the dog got the Nintendo game killed at all of the NHL Ducks." Yeah, don't remind me. Please don't remind me, Kale. It's just rough time. It's rough time starting off for the Ducks. It's just a brutal time. I'm hoping they could turn around, but they're in a major rebuild, and I'm just hoping Gibson can step it up in terms of goal. That's my only hope. And he obviously doesn't have it, as Adam kind of said on Neutral Zone on Tuesday. But back to the Lakers. They close out the week when they play the Portland Trail Blazers. And then starting the next week, the Clippers play at Oklahoma City on Tuesday. The Lakers play at Denver next Wednesday. And then the Clippers play at Oklahoma City next Thursday. And then by the time next Friday rolls around when I do the show, the Lakers will be playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, which that's going to be a tricky matchup as well. So the Lakers have a lot of tricky matchups so far, but we'll see what happens. And Bob Murray was the one that killed the Anaheim Ducks. That was the guy I was thinking of. I think it was Bob something, but Bob Murray killed the Ducks, and Gibson has been no help, and he is unfortunately being wasted in Anaheim. And Larry says he's going to play NHL 23 and act like my record is the real record this season. Yeah, that would basically describe the Ducks in a nutshell. But back to the Lakers. Yeah, my goal for the Lakers this year is make the playoffs. Make the playoffs, then that would be an accomplishment. If they miss the playoffs, then so be it. But they're not really going anywhere a whole lot, especially with Westbrook. And I actually talked with a buddy of mine yesterday on when Russell Westbrook gets traded, and this was actually a great question that he brought up. I said 20 games into the season, Westbrook gets traded, and he says he probably predicted, I think he's predicted like 10 or so. And we both predicted that. I don't think he makes it to Christmas Day. And Santa should give us a good package in return for Russell Westbrook, but I don't think the Lakers are going to get even that, but we'll see what happens. The Clippers' expectations this year is probably playoffs. Some people are surprisingly picking the Clippers already. Like, I think Charles Barkley picked the Clippers to win the West. Now, that is a bold pick on his part, considering the Clippers find many ways to lose in the postseason. And we still don't know what's going to happen going forward. And obviously they're going to have a year of Kawhi Leonard, of being back for the first time since the previous year, the shortened season. But either way, I think playoffs are an expectation for the Clippers as well. If the Clippers don't make the playoffs, it's a bigger disappointment for them than it is for the Lakers. So that's going to do it for the NBA portion of the show. Before we get on out of here, we have to award the Dum Dum of the Week award. The Dum Dum of the Week award goes out to someone or an organization that does or says something stupid. And this could go out to anybody. No one is safe. Anyone can get the Dum Dum of the Week award. No one is safe from this award. And this was a no-brainer on who is going to get Dum Dum of the Week. And for me, Dum Dum of the Week has to go to the one, the only, the person who made the extreme claim before the MLB season started, Dave Roberts. So, Dave Roberts, before the season started, he said that the Dodgers were going to win the 2022 World Series. Way before the season started, by the way. So, I basically said, way back when, before the MLB season started, that if this prediction does not come true, he's getting Dum Dum of the Week. And sure enough, it didn't. And I hate to do this to you, Dave Roberts, but you shouldn't have gone on record. You shouldn't have said, we're going to win the 2022 World Series, because more often than not, that paints a target on your team's back. And more often than not, it basically backfires. Now, if he had said the NLCS or the World Series, then it might have been a little bit less worse, but you can't go out and be that confident in your team, because anything can happen in an MLB season. Remember, the MLB season is a marathon, not a sprint. It's not like when you won it in 2020. It still counts, by the way. Anyway, so unfortunately for Dave Roberts, and except not unfortunately, I have no regrets doing this, but Dave Roberts, for making that ridiculous prediction to start out all the way back in the beginning of the season, saying that the Dodgers were going to win the World Series, when unfortunately they wound up losing in the NLDS. You are this week's Dum Dum of the Week award recipient.
You're so dumb. You're so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And that, my friends, is all she wrote. I'm going to give a Dum Dum of the Week award honorary mention to this one. This mini Dum Dum of the Week. Oh my goodness. I have to give you all this little rap right here. So apparently this Padres fan, oh my god, my voice is starting to give out. So this Padres fan, I'm about to play this for you all. So this Padres fan made a little rap, and I guess it's called That's What's In. So I'm going to let you all listen to this, and if you all think it's cringeworthy, let me know. But if you all think it's cool and catchy, then you just let me know. So here's this little San Diego Padres rap. If this thing wants
Really going down to yellow and brown. That's what's in. Padres on the loose. Let's go, Goose. That's what's in. Bryce gonna lose, and Manny's gonna cruise. That's what's in. Give Philly no slack and send them back. That's what's in.
At first, I didn't know what this was. I'm like, what the heck? I almost died after listening to that at first. I'm like, what am I listening to? And it's borderline catchy, but it's more so sketchy. I'll give him an E for effort, but my goodness. If you all watch that video, I need your input. Is that catchy or is that sketchy? Like, please give me your full opinion on that. That's what's in. But on that note, yes, Larry, what the hell did I just listen to? That was my reaction when I first listened to that whole thing. Like, I gotta send you that, okay, so Larry does not like the whole little rap right there, but on that note, before I cringe everyone else that's listening live, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. It is that time, ladies and gentlemen, that I get on out of here, because I got to get me some grub, and I got to rest my voice. Yeah, dig? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I definitely do appreciate you all tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I definitely appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I definitely appreciate you. Big shout out to the chat room on Twitter, Larry B, Cale Henderson, Mike Pat, and Aaron X. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. It means the world to me. Next week, I promise you, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show will be back at its standard time, noon Pacific time on Friday. I promise you all, I'll try not to shuffle the show around. I promise you all. Unfortunately, I had SoCal things going on Friday, which meant I could not do the show that day. But either way, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for your support. I'll be back on Monday to do set point at probably 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, you all have yourself a great rest of the week and a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy all the SoCal sports action happening, especially you San Diego fans, even though you block ticket prices to most of Southern California. You're not going to be forgiven for that. But until then, have a great weekend. Don't do anything dumb. Be smart, be safe. Don't land yourself on Dump Dump the League. I will see you on Monday for set point. Have a great week. And remember, SoCal is the show. Peace!